Okay, so welcome back, everybody. Again, we've got Jayson and Mira Calton here from Calton Nutrition, and they're sharing their absolutely wonderful story. It was a pleasure to hear their story on the initial episode, and we've got them back. Thank you guys for coming on.
Thank you for having us.
Look, I'd just like to quickly bring the listeners and the viewers up to speed of where you guys are at, and please forgive me if I butcher it. I'll do my absolute best. Mira and Jayson Calton, pretty famous in my world for the Calton project and bringing micronutrients to the fore, ones that we can actually use. Mira's story, absolutely phenomenal. A New York socialite and professional at 30 years old, being diagnosed with advanced early onset osteoporosis and the bone density of it in a DEXA scan of an 80-year-old female. Just absolutely jaw-dropping to hear that. Doing your research, going through the doctors, meeting Jayson, the doctor was ready to take her on, and in more ways than one. And so for those that don't know, Mira and Jayson are married, so success times two there. And actually over 2 years, all their combined research, their tenacity, Mira managed to reverse 100% that osteoporosis, and now she's got the health back. Moving on to the Calton project in 7 years, traveling over 100 countries through the world. What a story. I mean, I can't believe I tried to sum it up in a minute.
You did a great job. You got it all in there. Yeah.
Look, you guys, I love hearing you talk. I'd love to hear what you guys learned about nutrition. Specifically, I'd love to see, we got nutrition dogma out there. I had to do ketogenic diet for a long time to regain my health, my insulin sensitivity and so on, and it's worked great. But look, you got keto, you got paleo, vegetarian, vegan, all of it, and they're all dogmatic. They seem to be dogmatic and belief-based, and mine's the best, no, but mine's the best. And I know some of your guys' stories. So is there one diet for everybody that you guys saw that's going to get you healthy?
Well, we'll start with what we saw in the project, which was that as we traveled around to these remote tribes, they didn't eat the same things, and yet they were all doing great.
Yeah.
But what they all did is they ate what was available there, naturally limited what was available, because they, if you were living in the mountains, you didn't have a lot of fish. You had a lot of wild game. You had fattier meats. You had a lot of sometimes some areas had a lot of carbohydrates. It was really, really dependent based on where they were. But there were people that were very, very high carb. There were people that were very, very high protein. And there was not one diet that we saw across the world that made them nutrient sufficient and made them healthy.
Now, when you say high carb, I mean, again, I know some background to this one. I think I remember you saying one time, Mira, you saw a tribe in PNG in Papua New Guinea, 98% of their diet was sweet potato. Would that be right?
Yeah, I would say some of them were really high in sweet potatoes. For example, the people that were up in the mountains, and I can't remember the name of the tribe right now. We got some fantastic photos. It's up near the Hoolies. That they had basically ate, and it might have been, they had all sweet potatoes. I mean, like everything around there was sweet potatoes. I mean, you saw the women growing sweet potatoes. The men just sat around and watched the women grow everything. But every once in a while, they were allowed to eat pig. So, for example, that was the meat source.
But it
was once a week.
Maybe less even.
Yeah, sometimes. It was very rarely, and they were sharing it as the community. Interestingly enough, you can buy a wife if you have enough pigs.
They use pig as money. So that's how you buy your wife is 10 pigs equal pretty good wife.
And if you're a woman, it's your job to nurse the pigs. Again,
we'll get into those things later.
Insane. Not so much I will live. But I did give that a try.
You guys have seen some things.
So they were almost all sweet potatoes, and every once in a while they would have a source of protein, we also went to stay with some people that were on the rivers, and they were fish all day long. I mean, there was drying fish, there was smoked fish, everything was based on the fact that they were living on the waters.
Yeah, we also saw some physical changes, physical differences between these tribes too. Like the mountainous groups eating the more carbs with more sparse protein sources were shorter, pretty stocky. They might have had a little bit more body fat on them, whereas the people living near the Sepik River down in the lower valleys, they were taller, thinner, more muscular. Their bones were longer. So there were physical differences based on their diets.
But all maintained health in their own right, based on their natural diets.
Yeah, the thing that that was a really big question to us is, was there going to be a diet that was more universally favorable to health? But what we determined was there was one, but we just hadn't named it. I mean, it wasn't one of the definitions of our traditional diet. So it wasn't a vegan or a vegetarian or a low carb or a Mediterranean, but it was something that we've actually named now. We just call it, just because we don't have a better name for it, we call it a Nutrivore, but it's because it's based on whether or not you had enough of the micronutrients in the diet. So if you're eating carbs with a little bit of protein, are you still able to get the essential micronutrients that the body needed? They're called essential because your body cannot make them on their own. We have to take them in. So was their diet able to provide those essential micronutrients, whether it was carb-based or protein-based, animal-based or plant-based? It didn't really matter. It seemed to come down to one thing that no one's talking about, and that's micronutrients. And the interesting thing is when you start to look at diet from that perspective, from that Nutrivore perspective, it doesn't really matter what kind of diet you're following.
They're all right.
They're all potentially right if you can get those micronutrients in, but each diet has its own pitfalls that you have to overcome. Even my, favorite keto diet that, I can't say enough about has its pitfalls that you have to watch out for. So once you start to understand what those things are, then you can start to understand, okay, no matter what diet I follow, I can find some health benefits from it if I know what to look for and if I get those essential micronutrients in.
So we've thrown that word around a few times here and in the previous episode. What is a micronutrient?
Okay, so micronutrients there's 4 different parts of the micronutrient family. You have your vitamins. Everyone knows about those. Vitamin D, vitamin C, you've heard of those. You've got your minerals, calcium, magnesium, zinc, those are minerals. You got your essential fatty acids, like your omega-3s that you hear about that are good for you. And then the last group is your amino acids. And those are the things found in protein. So those are the 4 families. Now, none of them, what's interesting and what we always like to do is an orchestra analogy. You need every single instrument in the orchestra to be there at the right time if they're ever going to get the song as it was composed. One cannot take the place, the piano player cannot play the part of the drums, and the drums cannot do the part of the tuba. Each, very much like the orchestra, each micronutrient has specific functions in the body, and only they do those functions. So it doesn't matter if you're taking a whole lot of vitamin D, you're never going to get the job of zinc done, or you're never going to get the job of omega-3 done. They have this amazing ability to harmonize in the body. And that's the only way that all of the functions can be done in the way that they're meant to be done.
Right. And the interesting part of that, when you start to think of that analogy, it's also interesting to think that even a deficiency in just one of those instruments or one micronutrient can kill you. I mean, literally, that's what scurvy was, a deficiency in vitamin C, or rickets, a deficiency in vitamin D. And there's, history has millions of people who've perished because of being deficient in just one micronutrient. Now, those we actually named micronutrient deficiency diseases. But in today's modern world, what our modern diseases are, we don't necessarily think of them like that. But again, nutritional and medical theorists are starting to realize that our modern diseases aren't so different than those singular diseases before. They're just groupings. So something like osteoporosis, you're not just going to be just deficient in one. It's probably a couple of those instruments being deficient, your D and your K and your calcium, and a few of them coming together to form these larger, more prevalent diseases.
And actually what we did is we actually have taken now, because we're focusing on osteoporosis a lot, because it's my little project. I love it. But every single micronutrient, and no one thinks about this, every single micronutrient from A to Z plays a role in osteoporosis. And our next book, we actually talk about that although, yes, there's this key players, you got calcium, magnesium, K2, all these things that you hear about. Without every single micronutrient present, we've actually located the reasons why you will get this disease, even if you're taking the big boys. So it really is like Jayson said, it's every single one must be there.
Right. And a lot of times people, because of our media, if I remember a while back, vitamin D was oh my God, you have to have vitamin D. You're going to die without vitamin D. And, ironically enough, vitamin D is the one vitamin we can get from nature without having to ingest anything, right, from the sunshine, if you're in the right, latitude and if the sun's there and you expose yourself. But the point is, it isn't about just one darling of the day micronutrient. Every one of them is just as important. People always ask, if you could just take one micronutrient, what would it be? I mean, my God, that's ridiculous. That's like, what instrument's the best one in Beethoven's Fifth? I don't know. It's the one that is at the moment, if it's there at the right time, right? And that's the same thing in your body. They all work together. You need every single one of them. There isn't one. And and like Mira was saying, too much of one. That's the other side of the coin. People have just been, let's just take them all in. And then you've got all these mega doses now coming out. And that is absolutely
equally as dangerous.
Just as dangerous when you start to think about how they work together. If you start to understand that they may be competing with one another, which they are, then, and if a receptor site is full, the other one can't get in. Well, imagine if you're taking 10 times or 1,000 times, what the RDI or DV is for this one. These guys can never get in. So by taking more of one, you could be causing a deficiency in another. And so that's why supplementation really has to be done correctly.
So we started this conversation off about diet. Why can't we just get all these micronutrients and essential, you used the word essential there, which I want to come back to because we glossed over it, and I'm sure a lot of people don't quite grasp how important that is. But why can't we just get this stuff from a normal diet?
Well, it would be great. We'd love to say that you can. Unfortunately, we have yet to find one that actually does it. In fact, that's one of the major things that we get asked more than anything else. Which diet is best? So we decided to actually do a study on it.
Yeah.
You can tell them about it.
So that was so we did a study and we published the study and we looked at initially we looked at 4. We've added in paleo and primal to that equation now in a follow-up study. But the original study was looking at a low-carb diet. We used the Atkins diet. We used the DASH diet, which is a kind of a medically founded diet to reduce hypertension. We used the Best Life diet because back in those days, Oprah and Bob Green was really big back then. So we looked at that one. And then we also looked at, what was the other one? I think a South Beach diet.
Yeah.
That was pretty popular back in those days.
Mediterranean.
So we looked at quite a few different style diets, and we wanted to find out, based on their books and their recommendations, if we looked at their dietary plans down to the last grain of salt, where they would come in. Would they meet minimum micronutrient sufficiency levels, meaning just the minimum RDIs or DVs or RDA or whatever you guys are aware. We have minimum levels that you need to take in, and remember, those minimum levels are exactly what they're minimum wage, right? They're just enough to keep you away from disease, not necessarily enough to thrive. But would they even meet those minimum levels? And what we found was that no diet reached even close to the minimum level. I think on average they were like 48% deficient. And in order to reach minimum levels on average with any of these dietary philosophies, you'd have to eat close to 27,575 calories per day. So, I mean, that's how much food volume you'd have to take in to reach the at least minimum level of these essential micronutrients with today's food, according to the FDA database.
Yeah, and these are diets that are organized by doctors, hospitals, dietitians. All of these diets were created to make you healthy. And what we found out during the research was, not only will you not be healthy, you're going to actually put yourself in a deeper hole following most of these, because you're going to become so deficient in your nutrients. You're going to slow down your metabolism. You're going to not be sleeping well. All of these things are going to start happening because you followed this. And these weren't low calorie.
No.
Some of these had 6 meals a day, and they were still 48% deficient.
So 27,575 calories just to meet the bare minimum.
The bare minimum levels. in these
in a normal diet. So I'm sure people are now thinking, because we've got some pretty educated people watch this, now they're thinking, hey, I'm just going to go paleo. I'm just going to go primal. How do they step up?
We looked at those as well, and they were still around 14,000 to 17,000 a day in order to meet minimum levels.
They were the best, and that should be understood. They're an ancestral diet. They love the fact and tell everyone all the time that they are the most nutrient dense diet. Now, one other thing we have to keep in mind is, as we're looking at this is how many nutrients you're taking in before you consider the anti-nutrients delivered in these foods.
Right.
So you can say, like, spinach, for example, super nutritious, tons of calcium, tons of iron. And if it's not cooked, you have to take all that back.
You have to take almost 80 to 90% of it back because of the oxalic acid.
Yeah. So it's one of those things, like, this is the maximum you can get if your body could actually absorb it.
Yeah. And when we did this research, we didn't take into effect any anti-nutrients.
No.
We didn't people out there are saying, oh, that's why I didn't have some, because they're taking out all that stuff. No, we just put it all in. We did the addition part of that equation. We didn't do any of how you prepared the food, how old the food was, what soil did it grow in, did it have any anti-nutrients.
This is
we
best
didn't look
case
at that.
scenario.
We didn't look at whether your gut had enough, ability to digest it, whether you had any of these problems. We just looked at how much went in. And the really interesting thing is, again, I don't know how interested your audience is in learning all about this, but one of the things that really shocked us was that when you really looked at, so many people out there have an issue with overweight, obesity. And I think a lot of, again, nutritional philosophers have been wondering, how is it and why is it that these people, well-educated people who know that eating too much food is bad for them, know that, that the calories equal increased weight, why do they continue to eat 5 and 8 and 10 and 12,000 calories a day? And what it really comes down to, in our opinion, is it comes down to the fact that their bodies are just more in tune with the physiological need for these essential micronutrients, and that they're literally trying to take in these micronutrients the only way their bodies know how, which is eating more food. They literally are craving, we call it hidden hunger. And in fact, science calls it hidden hunger. There's 2 forms of hunger. One, when you don't get enough food.
Stomach grumbling.
And one, when you don't get enough of your essential micronutrients. And this causes this craving that forces well-knowledge, well-educated people to continuously eat the foods that are causing their disease, because they cannot quiet that crave monster. And the interesting thing, what we found, and what other researchers have also found, is when these essential micronutrients are met, once you've reached the minimum levels, the crave monster quiets. It stops. And there's a big difference between trying to stop eating Big Macs and French fries and ice cream when there's no more voice inside your head yelling out for them. Then you can put your discipline in. But there's no discipline in the world that is going to stop these cravings, because the body is telling you, if I don't have the essential micronutrients I need, I'm going to die. That's what the body thinks. And so if you keep not putting it in, the body is in this emergency state. Once you give it what it needs, it'll quiet down, and then you can start to use discipline, and then you can start to get somewhere. But I think that's a really interesting way of looking at obesity. It isn't the ignorance and the non-discipline and laziness. It really is a physiological thing. And once we start to understand, that's just one power of becoming micronutrient sufficient, just one great aspect of it.
I love the way you put that, Jayson, and it's so great having you guys on, because you're so well spoken and educated. I said to people in my lectures, this guy inside your head, he's running the show. He's a lot smarter than you are, and he's going to make you do stuff. He's going to make hormones go out. And once those hormones are out, they do what they do, and they just drive you. And you put in such an eloquent way, really, to sum up what you've said there. If you meet those micronutrients, bang, now we don't have that inane sort of hunger, and it just doesn't make sense, and we feel guilty about it. And also, that guy's so smart, he's trying to hit that 27,575 calories.
Yeah, he's trying to get you to eat it.
He's working.
Yeah, they're working at it.
But it also makes you understand that you no longer have to think about, when you choose a diet, thinking like, okay, which one is the perfect diet? We're telling you right now, it's a waste of your time to start focusing. There's one that's perfect for you today. There's one different one that might be perfect for you tomorrow. And we're constantly evolving as human beings. at different stages of our lives. And that's a very personal choice. It is for no one to tell you how you should be eating. But once you look at your diet and you say, what are the failures of my specific diet? What are the strengths of my specific diet? And you weigh that in your own head and you say, okay, logically, I'm still going to stick with this program. I still want to be vegan, or I still want to be paleo. But with a new awareness of, I have problems here that are never going to be fixed by the diet. There has to be something else.
Yeah.
And that's where like the supplementation, understand lifestyle, these things, proper food preparation will come in. You have to give the person the tools and the knowledge to understand which diet they're following and what it's depleted of, so they can bring it up to the level that's going to supply them with better health.
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell kind of a personal story. You know, when I first met Mira, if somebody said anything about against the keto diet, that was the end of it. Right? I mean, there is nothing wrong with a keto diet, right? It is the best diet, period, end of story. But then people come up, well, I'm doing a keto diet, but I still have this issue, or I still have that issue. And, oh, you're just not doing it right. You got to do it better. Something's wrong. Keto diet is the only way to live. One of the things that the Calton Project and really focusing on micronutrients allowed me to do, and partially because I just couldn't deny it anymore, is to understand what the pitfalls are of that diet. And I think it's a good thing no matter what, you know, people are just as passionate about their vegan diets or their vegetarian diets. But once we start to realize, no matter how passionate you are, realize what those pitfalls are. And then, like Mira said, you can work to improve that diet. And really, at the end of the day, I think the way that we do keto now, when we do keto, is so much better. And I know for a fact it's so much healthier for us than the way that I was doing it before, because I wasn't willing to look at those things. So we can talk a little bit about some of the pitfalls of these specific diets if you want, so that, you know, people who are following them can learn.
If you think about a diet in general, what's a diet? A diet is elimination of specific foods.
Yeah.
And if you just look at your diet, if you're vegan, you're eliminating animal products. If you're paleo, you don't have dairy and you don't have legumes. If you're keto, you don't have a lot of carbohydrates. So if you look at just, you know, get the emotions out of it. Yeah. When you eliminate something, you also eliminate the micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, essential fatty acids, and amino acids that are delivered by those foods. By default, you're going to be short in them because food is your delivery system. So it's just understanding that.
Yeah. And maybe also too, when people are thinking about food, they may not be aware of which foods tend to carry more of the different micronutrients. There's so many micronutrients, and they might think, well, I mean, some people might think all food contains all micronutrients, kind of like a multivitamin. Some people might say, well, I don't know which micronutrients are in which food. So it kind of stands to reason if I reduce my carbs, or if I take out my animal, you know, based foods, I'm going to be losing out some, but which ones, we don't know. Well, the good news is science has shown us these things. We've got lots of research studies out now that they've looked at the foods, they've evaluated which micronutrients are in them, and then which micronutrients are deficient in each specific kind of diet. So right off the top, that's the number one roadblock to every one of them. And, you know, so the paleo diet was low in chromium, B vitamins, and calcium. Those were the big ones with the paleo diet. Low carb, B2, B9, calcium, magnesium, and iron.
Those and a lot of people wouldn't think that because you're eating a lot of meat.
Yeah, but
so a lot of people aren't thinking that it would be low in iron. People are eating a lot of cheese and they're saying, why would it be low in calcium? So it's not necessarily, science is showing us that even if you're doing these things, there's probably a lot of it you're not realizing you're becoming deficient in.
The other thing is when you eat these diets, you tend to eat the same 8 to 10 foods all the time, right? So while there is a vast array of different foods each diet offers, the individual says, well, for breakfast, I want eggs and bacon. Lunch, I want chicken wings. Dinner, I want fish. Maybe every once in a while they'll deviate from that, but we further restrict our restricted diets just in general. The vegan diet is low in B12, vitamin D, vitamin K2, iron, calcium, and a usable form of omega-3. Remember, omega-3, we'll talk a little bit more about these, but there's two forms of omega-3, plant-based and animal-based. And only the animal-based one has the EPA and the DHA that we need. And so that's why the vegans can be so deficient in that. And I know there's going to be vegans and vegetarians out there saying, yes, but the omega-3 that we take in through plant can be converted to EPA and DHA in the body through elongation processes. But if you look at the research, guys, you're going to see that your body is very inefficient at doing this, and most people do not convert enough to meet minimum levels. So these are all things from a micronutrient standpoint that we can all learn from the different diets out there. But there's other problems with the diets besides just taking in less micronutrients.
For example, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure you're on the internet with me all the time. David, like we see all these recipes popping up, and it's it could be the keto diet, but it's a nut bread made with nut flour. It's there are so many nuts and seeds and these things out there these days, and people don't realize that the more nuts you put into your program, the more omega-6 you're adding to your program. And because it is so inflammatory, you really need to up your omega-3. So if you're on a program such as the vegan diet, which uses a lot of nut butters and nut cheeses, or if you're a low carber and you're doing the same thing, or if you're paleo and you're doing the same thing.
That's one thing they all have in common.
Hey, there you go. They all love nuts.
They all love nuts and seeds. But the problem is nuts have 5 anti-nutrients. That's the most of any food on the planet. So number one, it's going to start poking holes in your gut. It's going to start creating all kinds of wreak havoc there. But like Mira said, people might say, well, what's wrong with omega-6? Omega-6 is an essential fatty acid. We need omega-6. Yes, we need omega-6, but not at a 23-to-1 ratio, and actually when paleo diets and low carb diets were studied, they came back at a little bit less than the norm. So like the standard, what we call standard American diet, I don't know if you have a standard Australian diet, probably just as bad as ours. Exactly. So you're looking at up to 23-to-1 omega-6 to omega-3, 23 omega-6 to 1 omega. Now, as you should know, the best ratio you could do and what you should be shooting for is a 1-to-1. Most health professionals will say if you're below a 4-to-1, you're doing good, and you probably are doing good. But unless you're at a 2-to-1 or a 1-to-1, you're probably not in that optimal health zone. So you imagine coming from a 23-to-1. Now, a lot of these come down to 14 or 15-to-1, but you're still there. And so it's not that omega-6 isn't important, but when you have too much of anything, and it goes back to that mega dosing again, when you have too much of this, it causes inflammation. And as we all know, inflammation is again, the root of all these diseases. So I know people are like, oh my gosh, how can I get away from nuts? That's what I use as a snack. That's what I use as a flour. But you have to. And please understand, you cannot just take some omega-3. Do not just go pop a fish oil pill and think, I'm covered, because it's 1 gram, right? 1,000 milligrams, 1 gram, that's all you get. And then at the most you're going to get in a tablet. Even if you take 4 or 5, you'd have to take 35, in some of these instances, pills in order to get up to that omega-6 level. So it's driving the omega-6 down and then raising the omega-3 up with the proper supplementation.
Yeah. It's like listening to one of my favorite podcasts in Megadose, as you've used. You guys are saying all the questions I'm about to ask in advance. It's amazing. And you're much like me. I mean, I sell a few supplements, but I only get them because I want them at a cheaper price for me. I get the best quality ones in the world. I know you guys have got an omega-3 supplement. You just said, no, don't take lots more.
No, because we started making an omega-3 supplement because we got tested. Yeah. Here we are. I mean, this was only like a couple of years ago. Yeah, we had already written like 3 books or something, and we're all of a sudden we're like, let's just test our omega-3, and we're like, we don't need any nuts, we don't need any grains, we don't need, we don't have olive oil. Like, we're going to be great. And we went out and tested.
Well, at the time we were eating some nuts.
We still had nuts at that point. Yeah. And we got tested, and we were like a mess.
Well, we were just way higher than we should.
Higher than we wanted to be. And so that's why we started looking at this. And then we were like, but we take an omega-3. What's wrong with omega-3? And that's why we do what we do, and why we even create supplements, is because we know what you actually need, and we know it has improved our health, and we know it's improved the health of our clients. And if it's not out there, it should be. Yeah, so that's really what got into it.
As we talk more about the supplements, and we can do that even at a later date about what we do, just know that we only create a supplement when there's a gap in the marketplace. So there were a lot of problems with the omega-3s that were out there, and we can talk about that later. But we don't believe in creating a supplement that's already being done well somewhere else. Yeah. We don't.
It came down to what we were talking about with the diets, is that regardless of which dietary protocol you're following, you will find deficiencies. And our goal every single day is to fit a person in every seat of that orchestra. Basically, you have to bring up your micronutrients across the board so that everyone is sufficient. And no diet, no matter who's tried to create it, we have studies on dietitians trying to create it. They couldn't figure it out. The American Dietetic Association failed. No matter what diet you're following, you're going to have empty seats or empty micronutrients that are void and not in your diet, that aren't there to support your health, which is the reason why the third thing of supplementation is just so important.
Right. So if you're following a keto diet or any diet and you've seen huge improvement, which I'm sure that you have, because every diet does give huge improvement, but you've still got some gaps in that health. If you're still not burning fat the way you want, if you're not sleeping as well as you want, if the headaches are still there, if the skin rashes are still there, start to think about, I don't have to throw out the baby with the bathwater, but start to think about, what can I do with my chosen dietary philosophy to fill in those gaps? What can I do to become a Nutrivore? What can I do to lay that on top of the philosophy that I've chosen to follow right now? And no matter what philosophy that is, there are things that you can do. And so it really comes down with the diets to three things: getting those micronutrients that we need that are just devoid in that particular diet philosophy, lowering your omega-6 to making sure that it can come into a realm where you can still supplement logically and realistically and sustainably and reach a 1-to-1, as close as possible to a 1-to-1 ratio. And then also understanding under what anti-nutrients are, which foods they're found in, not necessarily cutting them out, but understanding how to properly prepare those foods, like the people we with and live with in the Amazon, how to prepare these foods to get rid of the anti-nutrients, because there's traditional ways to do it, and you can still have them.
And I know we can't talk about everything, but I would love for you to, if you want to share a link to where these anti-nutrients are found, we've got a downloadable guide or something that totally gives you and your guys to read.
Thank you so much. I mean, look, your passion just comes across so much, and you nailed it about 5 minutes ago there, Mira. This came about because of a horrible situation that you found yourself in, and through that adversity and need, you guys met, you guys created, you became Nutrivores. I love that term. And yeah, you're driving this from a position of need and passion, and you wanted to help others. I guess I'd like to sum this one up then. Is that where your first book came in, Rich Food, Poor Food?
Well, Naked Calories was actually first. Naked Calories came, and that was really explaining to people about the pandemic of micronutrient deficiency. You say micronutrient to most people, they glaze over. So explaining what they are, and the fact that 99% of people, well, in the US, it's 92 was the latest statistics on how many people have at least one micronutrient deficiency. The UK says every single person has micronutrient deficiencies. So this is, if you're thinking this does not pertain to you, take a good look at yourself, take a good look at the stats. You are in this group. Yeah. The likeliness is that you are in this group.
Yeah.
So that's why we wrote Naked Calories, just to explain what micronutrient deficiency was and how prevalent it is. Rich Food, Poor Food is our grocery store guide.
So this is Naked Calories, if you guys haven't seen it. Naked Calories, that's the one. And then the next one is the Rich Food, Poor Food.
And this one it's a grocery store guide, because the first step is obviously what you're eating. So we wanted to give people a grocery store guide that goes down every aisle of the grocery store and gives you rules. Like, don't buy if it says this word, choose it if it has this word, because this one actually means something. Or how to read the ingredients and what all these chemicals mean to your body. So that was the second book. Micronutrient Miracle came next, and that's a plan. That's a plan. That has protocols for, I think, 9 different condition-specific diseases.
Including a ketogenic protocol. Yeah.
Wow.
And that really shows you how to add micronutrients to cure what health element you have. So which micronutrients are key to that, and how to organize your day to follow it. What we're working on right now is Beating Osteoporosis, which is our new baby, not out until next September, but here to help anyone with osteoporosis. I mean, we get so many emails a week from people in their 30s and 40s, and more men than ever before.
A lot of military guys. I think they were exposed to a lot of chemicals during their fights, wherever they were. A lot of them were.
And stress levels, but there's so many different things. And so that's going to be one of our main missions this next upcoming period is, yes, all the diseases, but really just here to shed some light on a disease that hasn't gotten enough press yet.
Yeah, and just to jump in on the beating osteoporosis, a lot of people might feel, well, I'm not interested in osteoporosis. I don't have it. My parents didn't have it. I'm probably not. It's going to be the #1 most prescribed disease in the next 20 diagnosed disease in the next 20 years, because so many people are getting it now, and they're finding out that bone health is linked to all the other factors, specifically heart disease and cancer ratings and all these. So your bones, they're actually looking at your bones as being a separate system in your body, and osteoporosis and osteopenia really being kind of the canary in the coal mine to some of these other health conditions. So when my point is, when you're working to prevent osteoporosis, which we all should be, you're also working to prevent all these other health conditions too. So it is relevant, even if your focus necessarily isn't on your bones, which why I don't know why you wouldn't want to focus on a strong foundation, but it will help with everything else as well. Yeah.
So.
Well, I just couldn't think of two people more qualified than you guys to follow on that. You know, you've been to over 100 countries in this modern world. I just don't think anybody's done what you guys have done. The people you've seen, you studied for 7 years in those different populations. You saw the good, the bad, and the ugly, and you've come from a position of very, very poor health and back to 100%. Where can people go to find out more about what you guys do, your books, and so on?
CaltonNutrition.com. So CALTON nutrition.com is the best place to start. Everything from our books to our supplements to just there's a whole thing on the Calton Project. If you want to see pictures of those amazing people we were talking about.
Right on the website.
There's an entire photo album up there of that, and more of a description of what we were seeing in the different places. That's probably the best place. And we have a micronutrient quiz. If you go to caltonquiz.com, CALTON quiz.com, you can see what the likelihood is that you're micronutrient deficient. We spent a little time talking about the prevalence. If you don't believe us, take the quiz, caltonquiz.com, and you can find out, you know, are any of my habits leaving me deficient? Is my food choices leaving me deficient? And you might be surprised at what you find.
Yeah.
You did it again. My last question is going to be, can you do this with food? And you've just basically said, take the quiz and find out.
Exactly right. Yeah.
I'm reading your mind.
I love it. Look, thank you so much again. I'm going to get you guys back. We're going to really wrap all this up and try and figure out the solution. I know you guys have come up with that. So thank you so much again for your time, Jayson and Mira, and lovely having you on.
Thank you.
Have
a great day.
Awesome.